shame on Dr. Jill Biden. Shame on her as a wife. When your husband is not well, shouldn't that be the priority? To me, that's the saddest part of this. I think it's almost criminal from a human level what they've allowed to happen to him. I don't like him. I would never have voted for him, but I still can have empathy for a situation and be sad at how this man is being treated.
This was just recently, and you said, I'm concerned for Trump's safety.
First of all, I've been wondering about something like this for a few years based on the hatred and the vitriol that was coming his way.
So many people.
And I kept saying, this is so scary. Is he being protected? Because he goes into the crowd. He's a man of the people. Like he just is. And
when you walked in and we started kind of chit-chatting about things, I said, this is what I want to ask you about first, which is just this transition from going from scripts to non-script. So walk me through the liberation, the challenges, the moments where you broke through, where there was resonance with people, like, and how that all felt. So how did it go when you finally started saying, what the heck you wanted to say?
Right? It's a big first question. Yeah. The unique thing about SportsCenter, especially the one that I did the last 3 years at noon Eastern, it's 2 live hours. And everything I said, I wrote. We all pretty much write everything. Unless you have your highlight shot sheet, which are notes, and then you ad-lib if you're good. If you're doing your job, you ad-lib from that, tell your story. So there was always a lot of ad-libbing. It was very structured. And this is how long the story needed to go. This is how long the interview needed to go. 10 seconds to break. Like, that's certainly scripted structure. But that's something I think I'm most proud of that most people don't realize. There's assistance if necessary.
Sure.
The graphics, which have all the research notes, those are written. But usually, here's the thing. With sports, it's so much about your personality and your style. With news, you're not supposed to have a personality, and you need to read and be rigid. And most, like here in New York, those are union shops where you're not allowed to change anything.
Yeah.
I know when I'm watching a sportscaster who has not written it themselves. Like, I can feel it. Yes, scripted, but unique because the conversations we had, I call them conversations versus interviews. I think there's a big difference. I'd much prefer a conversation.
Yeah.
It has been super different from the not having to toss a commercial break in 10 seconds, right? And wrap it up. And there were certainly things I had to say when I was at ESPN that I certainly would not have maybe, but there's rules. We all have bosses. Now I don't. And it's so weird because all I've done for 28 years is like, I've loved just being able to have conversations with so many unique people that are different than me, really different or similar. And to get to just listen. Like, I had an idea always of what I would ask people, whether it's at ESPN or even now on my new show. But 90% of the time I don't get to most of it because I'm reacting to what they're saying versus my list. But that's just taken years of trusting my gut and knowing how I like things as a viewer is to not like question, answer. It's like robotic. It's not interesting to me.
There's always a question within your answer. Yeah. And that's the hard thing. That's the thing that makes a great conversation is when you sort of surrender the question list and you just listen and you go, oh, I don't understand that. Tell me more.
Yeah.
I think the person that I feel like is one of the best at it is Tucker Carlson.
Oh, so good.
He's just the best at it. And then when I sat down with him,
we were with him in Florida.
I was. And he would go, oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
And you're just like, it's such a simple thing, but it's like helps open and explain things in such a great way. And it's really demonstrates presence and a wanting to know someone.
Caring. They can care about what they're saying and their story.
Yeah, exactly. So when you were at ESPN and you wrote all this, which I didn't know that. I figured it was just all writers and you just read the prompter and maybe you got the script before just to kind of read through it so that it would flow smoothly on prompter. But
plus there's a lot of breaking news.
Sure.
Especially in that time slot. We always So sometimes you'd have it all written and 10 minutes before or 30 minutes in, it's blown up and you're like, well, and you better be able to wing it on the fly. And so the pressure was super high. I missed that.
Yeah.
I missed adrenaline. That. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you know all about missing
the adrenaline. Was there anyone editing your work then to sort of say like, you can't say that? Cause I mean, there's that, but it's also sports. So it's not also the most controversial topic, sports.
Well, it shouldn't be.
Well, right. And obviously your big controversial moment came with Biden, which is, obviously an out of context sort of situation. This wasn't, LeBron James coming and having a chat with you or another athlete. It's somebody kind of out of context. But normally sports it's not the most controversial thing in the world to talk about or report on. So how was it very often that your script was sort of redlined and they were like, hey, you can't say these things. This doesn't pass.
Mm-hmm.
AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement that delivers daily nutrition through gut health support and is backed by multiple research studies, so you can trust what you're putting in your body. I trust AG1 because, unlike so many products, their entire formula is backed by research studies, not just the ingredients. Over 14 years, AG1 has been focused on innovation with a trusted, nutrient-dense blend that's the perfect complement to my diet. I can trust their research and how they're validating the product working in the body. AG1 has been third-party tested for safety for years and is trusted by experts and medical professionals, giving you one less thing to research. They're posting results online from their studies, and it's interesting to see how many of the study participants had the same feelings of energy, focus, supported digestion, all from using AG1. For example, at 30 days, 80% of the people in the research study noticed less gas and bloating. 97% of the people in a research study felt more energy. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for so long. It's easy and satisfying to start your journey with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/prettyintense. That's drinkag1.com/prettyintense. Check it out.
There were times they have very good editors that are assigned to each show. They call them news editors. They would read everything before. I mean, they should. And most of them did a great job with that. To write a 2-hour show, it's a lot. So my morning, I'm crashing all morning and with kids and trying to get a workout in and then hair and makeup.
Sports. How do you watch it all?
You don't.
Yeah.
You read a lot. I think one of the benefits of doing it every day is that the stories kind of continue. So if you're in the NBA finals and you're coming off of game 2, well, you know that, game 3, they're going to Dallas. The stories continue to build. And so the facts. And for finals, you're going to watch every game, right? Yeah. For the everyday, game 102 in the Major League Baseball season, that's tougher. So I always had my shortcuts. And that sounds bad, but it's more, there's no way you can consume it all. So I knew which websites to go to, which statistics, which box scores are really important. And for the baseball shot sheet or any shot sheet, Monday Night Football, I'm scratching stuff out and a ton of notes. The hard part is, each show, they would try to edit it differently. So you can watch the morning Sports Center, but at noon we're doing it differently. Maybe it's shorter, maybe it's longer. And so it's not like sometimes I would get it and do it live, seeing it for the first time while I'm showing it to you.
I know the skill.
Hello.
Good job.
Yes.
Because when I get prompter, I'm like, I'm going to read this cold and they're like, that was good. I'm like, yeah.
Right? There's that
wasn't live TV for me, but still,
feels
good though.
It does. And I'm like, okay, crushed that. Or can we do that over next hour? Because that sucked. And I mispronounced, like in hockey, right? I mispronounced one name. And that's your credibility though. Yeah. It's no excuse that ESPN didn't cover hockey as much. And so, and at the end, when they lost like the rights to NASCAR the last several years, I was so bummed about that because I've always been a gearhead. And I don't know if you know my racing history. I'm obsessed. So I was always fighting for it and fighting for, our analysts to come in and Ricky and like, bring him in. Yeah. So, but one mistake on one highlight. Sure. Yeah, if it's a Monday Night Football, it could be a 4, 5, 6 minute highlight. Like my abs would hurt. Because you're projecting, which is from here, and I'm into it, and I'm moving, and I'm back and forth to the monitor. And then if I did one thing wrong, I wouldn't focus on the 99% good. Of course, we focus on the one word, the one stumble. And I'm like, but I think that's what makes you eventually successful in anything, is if you're never fully satisfied, right? We got to find that middle ground to give ourselves grace, but still aim for perfection, even if it's nearly impossible.
Do you feel like coming away from that role that you had at ESPN and being so engaged with sports and reporting on it, obviously knowing even more, writing those scripts, do you feel like you can walk away from that proud and finish with that and ready for the next chapter? Or do you feel like there was something left at a big event, or, you know, whether any kind of sporting event or anything that you feel like that's the thing I wish I could have done, or just a skill set that you wish you had developed?
Yeah.
You walk away happy?
So happy, so proud, so grateful for everything, even the stuff that was painful, even the stuff that I didn't like. Like, I literally would not change a thing. I did much more than I ever dreamt of. My dream was SportsCenter, and that was since I was a little girl. So to have done that was awesome. And I never lost appreciation for it when I'd walk in the studio, because you've been there. It's like, right? You were there.
Been to the car wash many times. Probably at the end of my career in 18.
Yeah,
I probably came there
guessing.
at 18.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, I came
massive.
quite a bit from from 5 to 18.
Right.
You know, probably came through a handful of times.
Yes. And I never actually saw you there, but I'd be like, oh, there she is. Someday I'll meet her.
But you were dun, 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 dun.
We were all over.
When it was the thing. I mean, there's all the other networks started, you know, doing their own sports center and sports networks. But ESPN was it for so long.
That's why it was the end all be all for me and for most. That's why it was like, there's no other place.
Yeah.
No matter what, even if there was more money offered elsewhere or whatever. But once I got there, I actually turned down the first offer. I was pregnant with number 2. My first was 20 months old, and I was about to have number 2, like in 3 weeks. And I knew I wanted more. And Stuart Scott, actually, who ended up being one of my few, like, true friends, like on the personal level. God, I miss it. It's been 9.5 years. It's crazy. He was like, don't come until like you're done making babies. Because it's such a hard place to get into. This is in 2004 when I first turned it down, and then ended up taking it in 2007, had a third kid, and then it was like, okay, I'm definitely done. And it was the best advice I could have gotten from a man who had 2 daughters and who really cared about me for some reason at that time. It was just such a wonderful, special relationship where he took me under his wing, and that doesn't happen there, or really almost anywhere. So, I mean, I started there when my kids were 11 months old, 2 and 4. They're now 18, 20, and 22. So their whole life has been ESPN and me doing whatever it took to get the job done, the job that I loved. And so they struggled a little bit, because it's like, wait, well, what's your schedule? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it changes. And it could, maybe someone is willing to sit down with me and we just hop on a plane to go to LA, and I'll be right back in a red eye. So that's been a bit of an adjustment, but the job itself does not feel like one. I have loved the opportunity to just talk and to really have more confidence now than I've ever had, because for so many years there and most other places, you don't hear much unless you screw up. You know, you wonder and you beat yourself up, and then it's like, gosh. So the last 2 years when I, became controversial, I guess, and got in trouble, like, I knew in the middle of it, I was like, I'm doing my best work of my career during the shit show. Like, what is that? That's why I look back with pride, because even when it was its toughest and scariest, I was compartmentalizing and putting it back here and going in every day and crushing it. And I didn't know where it was coming from. Like, for me, it's a faith thing. Like, I really believe it was God that like dragged me through. That's why I know that I have no regrets, and I'm really grateful for a handful of people, but like proud that I never stopped giving it 100%.
I think that speaks to your skill. It speaks to your integrity, right? I think because you can go to bed at night and wake up in the morning and know who you are, and you can go to work, and you have when you have integrity like that, and you don't feel guilty or embarrassed or second guessing yourself. You when you have integrity, you can act like that. And then you were, I'm sure it like invoked some hyper focus. Stress is a common factor that affects everyone in today's fast-paced world, leading to various issues. What if the answer to a better stress response is in a key nutrient? I'm talking about magnesium. Actually, I'm specifically talking about Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This one-of-a-kind product is designed to reverse low levels of magnesium, which could be leading to a multitude of other health problems. What sets magnesium breakthrough apart is its ability to support healthy levels of stress hormones like cortisol, a better balanced stress response in your nervous and hormone systems, and healthy production of GABA, the relaxing neurotransmitter, leading to a more peaceful and better flow state. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It's the only organic full-spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress resilience and better sleep, all in one bottle. Simply go to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense. In addition to the discount you get by using promo code PRETTYINTENSE, there are always amazing gifts with purchase. Go now to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense and get your magnesium breakthrough and find out this month's gift with purchase. And the greats were always able to do well during those moments, is when it was really hard, during game 7s, during a lawsuit, during all of that kind of thing, is when someone can really hone in and focus and still be great. I mean, that just speaks to your skill set.
Thank you. You're right, I guess, in hindsight, just about the ability to compartmentalize, if nothing else.
Yeah. You know, when you said Stuart Scott, every time I'm pretty sure he said cooler than the flip side of your pillow, isn't it?
Yes.
Every time I flip my pillow over in bed, I think of that.
Do you really?
I swear to God, I think of Stuart Scott and I think of that line from him. And
I love that.
I mean, let's get into that integrity part. So it was 2021 and it was you interviewing Biden, correct?
Yes.
And so there was something that they wanted you to say and something that you wanted to say. So where was the separation between those two things?
Interviewing the President of the United States. And at the moment they asked me to do it, which of course, I mean, obviously.
I mean, I'd be super nervous, but I'd be like, yes.
Oh, I was nervous, but I'm not saying no.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
I knew there would be a lot of chefs in that kitchen.
On both sides.
Well, honestly, yes, but I didn't think about the White House side at the time.
Oh.
I literally didn't think, naive. I mean, that was stupid to not think about that. I was thinking, just because of the number of emails I was getting from many different people and the long group chain, the names on the email. I'm like, okay. And so, listen, I'd been there at the time for 15 years, 14 years, whatever it was. And so I know what that means when certain names are on the email chain, and the amount of work that was put into it. And, you know, rightfully so. But I knew it was like, this is what you're going to do.
We'd like you to say this. Think about these things, which is really like, say these things.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't even a suggestion. It was definitely like, here are the questions. And then we had a technical issue. It was not going to be live. It was because I was doing the 6 p.m. Sports Center at the time. So we taped it at like, I don't know, 3 or 4. So I'm having to like fill time and kind of BS with the President of the United States, who it was super weird because I could talk to him, but I couldn't see him. They had a black like curtain over the camera. They were like, I could see like, you know, the room, like an inch of it. And the rest, I'm like, hello? And so I heard him in the background and he's like, oh, well, who are we talking to? ESPN. Why ESPN? And I'm like, oh, just
awkward.
So awkward.
Great start.
Right. I know. And so he didn't know that I was listening, but hi, everyone knows open mic.
Open mic.
Anytime there's a mic in the room, just assume, right? Then they were like, okay, Sage, go ahead and say hi. And I'm like, Mr. President, you know? And so then, nice to meet you, chit chat. And then he started to talk about how he played football in college. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, I've done my homework. Yeah. And he said I was a receiver at University of Delaware. And I'm like, yeah, you know, whatever. And he goes, yeah, I had good hands. And I was like, yeah, like, I'm going to leave that one alone, given some of the history. And I was like, yeah. And then I just tried to keep it going. And he was in mid-sentence and he just said, anyway, and he trailed off. So this is April 2021. And I got chills, Danica, because family history with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so to me right away, I was like, oh my goodness. And from a human perspective, this has nothing to do with my politics or his. I was like, that made me sad and concerned. And this is 3.5 years ago.
Obviously, we see where it's at now.
Yeah. I mean, and everybody knew, but they were choosing to ignore it. But the interview was fine. I will say that the time I wanted to follow up, but knew I couldn't. It was right before the Major League Baseball All-Star game was moved from Atlanta for the alleged racist voter laws in Georgia. And I'm like, this is so stupid that they think it's racist for Black people to not remember to bring their ID or not have a driver's license. Like, stop it. And so my scripted question was, would you be okay? What are your thoughts on the possibility of that? And he's like, absolutely, in the laws. And I'm like shaking as a woman of color, being told that someone who looks like me, basically, that I'm not smart enough to remember or to have identification to go vote. So I would have loved to have followed up on that, but I couldn't. So someday.
Wow.
But it's still an honor. Like, it's still an honor to talk to a sitting president no matter what.
Right. What would you ask him today?
Well, I'd have to write it down and have him read it. I don't know that he would comprehend. Sorry.
No, he's clearly, it's clearly not. I mean, I think that's what has been demonstrated over the last couple weeks, even particularly, is his ability to just sort of formulate sentences and coherent answers and not trail off and not lose his place and make sense. And
you know what I would want to ask? I've never thought of that. I've never been asked that question. I want to ask why.
Why what?
Why continue? If you claim that Americans are your number one priority and this country, and you love this country, why continue when you know that you aren't able to lead the way that we need you to lead? Why? Because you're lying to yourself. And most importantly, in this case, you're lying to us. I expected better. I want to know why.
Would you have voted Democrat in the past? Would you have voted Republican? Does it even apply to, like, were you a sort of a follower of some sort and have been disappointed? Or
I have never voted Democrat, but I had never closed my mind to the possibility of it. It's truly on the candidate.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I think that's what we should be doing. But even in 2008 with Obama, where I was so excited to see someone who looked like me with the same background, a white mother and a Black father, I was so excited to see how far we had come.
Totally.
I had a grandmother who died at 98 a few years ago. So when she witnessed that, my dad's side, so my Black grandmother was been sobbing. So I appreciate that for someone who was born in 1920,
right,
who never thought this possible. For me, it was just the wrong Black president. That's all.
Wrong person.
So that's it. But if you're voting based on color, based on party, to me, that's a problem.
Well, I've said for a while, I'm like, why do we even have parties? Why can't we just listen to the candidates? And I know I'm pretty new into the political curiosity realm, probably really only been for the last 9 months.
Oh, I've watched every move, and that's taking a lot of courage by you.
I don't know a lot about it, but I'm curious, and I feel as though if he's willing to stay in position and has been perhaps not 100% since 2021, when he, lost his place and sort of trailed off in the middle of one of his answers, who really is running the ship? Right? It would tell me that he's not really running the whole ship, right? There's other players involved that are doing so much of the decision making and the work, and it really makes me wonder. And I think it was was it Elon or Joe Rogan? I think it was Elon maybe questioning, do we really need a president? When this is the situation, and these are all questions I've asked, do we need parties? Do we need, when we have this level of sort of of a mess going on, what role does the president, what is he or she could be? What's the job? Well, if you were the person was taken out of place, what?
Well, that's why I have a vice president. And it's been fascinating for me to watch how she's been in the basement for so long. I mean, at first, leading up to the election 2020, Biden was in the basement. Remember, he was not doing any interviews. It was wait, you got to get this candidate out there. So that's, again, further proof that everyone's known about his decline for a long time. And on that note, I've been saying this since my interview in 2021. Shame on Dr. Jill Biden. Shame on her as a wife. When your husband is not well, shouldn't that be the priority?
Embarrassing himself.
Yes. What does that tell you?
Protect him.
Protect him. be that wife, be that support system. So to me, that's the saddest part of this, the wife, and then who knows, I mean, whoever else in his family circle. And then with the advisors and then the people that are with him every day, I think it's almost criminal from a human level what they've allowed to happen to him. I don't like him. I would never have voted for him, never will, whatever. But I still can have empathy for a situation and be sad at how this man is being treated, not supported by the family. So
that's a human answer. I think that's a great answer.
Heartbreaking. And I can't imagine. My parents have been married for 53 years. My mother has always had my dad's back and vice versa. So I don't understand that. And I don't care how much money or pride or whatever is at stake.
Sure.
You took vows.
Or what level of depth you're in based on the institution and being a lifelong, a lifelong politician. Like what you kind of have to do based on, which is all curiosity. So when I've interviewed Tulsi or, different people, I'm like, what do you get into here? Like, right? A lifelong politician, like what is the job of that? And what do you end up having to do? How much do you have to sell your soul to get to the next level? And is what we're witnessing the selling of the soul, right? Is that the like, look, this is your position and we're a whole party? Because when I interviewed Tulsi Gabbard, she said that they would get a paper with all the different things to vote on that day. And they're like, this is what you vote and how you vote. And there's not even like an assessment made. It's just, this is how you support the party. So that really speaks to the lack of the lack of that job because it's a party.
Exactly. And so I think there is some selling of the soul, but it comes down to ego, power, and control.
Yeah.
And I've been asked a lot, over the last year or so about getting into politics potentially. And I'm like, right now, I would say absolutely not, because I do feel like you have to sell out. You have to sell your soul in many ways. People, if they don't like you on one side or the other, they're going to come after you and find out any way to bring you down, true or not, But so who's been running the country over the last couple of years? Listen, it's been disturbing to me to see Jill Biden out there the way she's been out there and speaking up so much and at rallies. And I mean, I don't think Kamala's been doing what a traditional vice president would do or should do or could do.
Right.
Recently, they've had to put her out there more. Everyone talks about Obama, who has never really gone away.
Exactly. And I was actually thinking about that. I was going to ask, do you think it's just another presidency role where he just is behind the scenes? Because isn't there some clip where he talks about, if I could, be president without him to actually be president, I would do it.
Without having to talk to the media every day. Yeah, I don't think any of that's a coincidence.
Well, I thought it was completely intuitive, and obviously it's been on the horizon as a potential. But you talking to PBD, to Patrick Bet David, and you were like, this was just recently, and you said, I'm concerned for Trump's safety. And then obviously what just happened, I mean, aside from Biden, you got that, and you've got a guy that they've been coming after for years and years, not even as president anymore, just indictment after indictment. And now with someone trying to execute him, to assassinate him, it's like, and all the weird sort of idiosyncrasies with that is look, I'm having a real good time with the slanted roof gifs, memes, jokes. They're hilarious.
Yes.
My favorite is when the cow is on
I saw the cow this morning. I'm
like the cow's like, slanted roof, huh? There's a cow.
Yeah.
But I mean, how crazy that really came to fruition. And, there are much crazier people like, Alex Jones, who have been, he's having his whole sort of life taken away from him, whether it's been, I think it's some giant lawsuit. I can't remember the exact number. 18 million, or I can't remember, but he losing everything, including his shows. But the dude's not been really far off. But there you are, sitting there going, worry for his safety, and sure enough. So I was in Europe when that happened, so I'm like seeing this in the middle of the night as I woke up for a minute. I'm like, yes, I know it's terrible to look at your phone, Instagram in the middle of the night, but I saw that and I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's one of those moments I think that none of us will ever forget where we were. I got a text from my producer saying, do you want to do a reaction thing? And I'm really bad at that, at putting the phone in front and just,
God, me too.
I'm like, who really cares what I think? This is so stupid. I'm not going to do it. I've done it a couple times, Harrison Bucker, and a couple of those things that hit home. But with this, I'm like, why does my opinion matter? Like, is the man alive? And oh, by the way, others are dead. And so let's not turn this into a viral moment for me or for anybody. But I understand the world as it is today. Then I turned on the TV right away and saw it. And I actually got choked up because not knowing that man had been killed and others injured, but and this is when Trump was walking away with his fist up, basically. The replay of that 5 minutes after it happened. And I got choked up because I was like, first of all, I'd been wondering about something like this for a few years based on the hatred and the vitriol that was coming his way.
So many people.
And I kept saying, this is so scary. Is he being protected? Because he goes into the crowd. He's a man of the people. Like he just is. And he needs that for his ego, for all of it.
I'm sure.
Absolutely. And you know what? A lot of people do. Most politicians, there's a lot of ego with those politicians.
I'm an athlete. I get it too. Like,
totally. And as a TV person.
On TV, when you're used to, you're kind of used to attention.
But I was just choked up because of where we have gotten to in this country that I love. I'm an Army brat. I lived in 4 different countries by the time I was 11 years old. As my dad, we traveled around the world with the U.S. Army. And so I am such a patriot for that reason, because I've seen how other countries are and live. And I'm just so grateful to our first responders and servicemen and women, because that's where I come from. My bloodlines are all that. So I don't have patience for people who hate the country. I'm like, great, goodbye. I'm one of those. Get out. It's fine. Yes, it's fine. And you know what? Enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if you don't, we are so imperfect, but we are still great. And I always say, it's so funny when there's a tsunami or an earthquake or anything terrible happens. Who do they call? They call us. And even though we're trillions in debt and will always be, we help, we show up. That's what Americans are about. So I get angry. Get out. Go have it better in whatever country you want.
Yeah.
Know your history and be respectful of those who are trying, at least. So I was devastated at that. I had just spoken with Laura Trump as well on my show and asked her that question. Is he fearful for his safety? And that interview aired 3 days before he got shot. And so we put it out again, her answer, because she said he thinks about it. He drives the Secret Service crazy sometimes because he goes into the crowds and he loves to, and I've met him twice and he's been incredible. And who am I? One of a billion people who he's shaken hands with. And he's taken a moment, and he's been amazing both times, especially the first time when we had a little more time.
Feel him like paying attention?
Absolutely.
It's not just like, okay, move on. You ask a question. Hello. Eye contact.
He asked me questions. He wanted to talk about football.
Aww.
Like it was a human moment, as you heard about. I heard about all the time with Bill Clinton and how he draws you in, and Obama. I never got to meet them, but that is a thing, and it is true with Donald Trump as well. So for her to say about the Secret Service, I'm like, oh yeah, like I've seen that. And she also said she didn't think that he was able to go there mentally, because if he thought about it, it would change the way he is with everyday people.
I can identify with that even as a race car driver. The first year after I retired, I watched them come down the front straightaway at 200 miles an hour in Indy 500, and I was like, y'all are crazy.
You did not.
I did that. Right? Because you just can't let that into your mind, because it's not the job.
No, you really felt that way?
The year after? Yeah, I was like, oh man, that's crazy.
Oh, I always said you were crazy.
Yeah, totally. 200 is just the minimum. Like we were doing 240.
Yes.
But anyway, not to compare my silly racing career to attempted assassination.
No.
What do you think really happened? I'm just curious.
I mean,
so many weird things. Right?
I don't want to speculate, because I really like to.
Conspiracies are so fun.
They are so fun. And then that journalist in me comes out, and I'm like, facts only. But then give me a glass of wine and let's talk, right? I will say there's too many. Right. Why is this water?
If I wouldn't have drank them for the last month in Europe, I would have.
There's just too many questions right now, too many things that don't make sense for me to not think there was something else going on. Right now, I don't know how much has actually been fully confirmed, but from every report that I've seen, if that Secret Service agent on the roof who had his gun pointed at the shooter and he didn't take him out, he had him in his sights and he was allegedly, this is what I'm waiting to be confirmed, but told, you don't shoot him until he fires first, and then you take him out. Because that's what happened. He had him lined up.
Yeah.
How do you not? And now we know that this guy was suspicious and around and seen and questioned 3 hours, for the 3 hours leading up to the shooting, going over with his rangefinder and observing, and then crawling up the ladder, and people are yelling. There's no way in hell someone didn't know something. I think the answers or lack thereof from Cheadle, the head of Secret Service, too many S's. Her answers have not been satisfactory to me as an American.
Yeah.
I haven't been confident with any investigations that have happened at a government level for many years. Who do you trust? So I hope we can learn the truth. But for me, the only reason he's here today with the big cover patch on his ear, it absolutely is divine intervention. And whatever that looks like to anybody, that slight tilt of the head at the last second, it just gives me chills. And I can't imagine, as his wife, as his daughter, as his son, as his grandchildren, like, to know how close it was and what evil was behind that. It just breaks my heart. And I know you know RFK quite well. I had him on my show, and we were talking about Biden refusing to give him Secret Service for all this time.
Finally got it.
It's disgusting. But what did it take for him to get it?
It took a near assassination, obviously. Who was it that said he deserves Secret Service? Was it like, I think it was Trump.
I think he did.
He deserves. I think it was Trump.
I think you're right.
Secret Service. I mean, and like, let's face it, his last name is Kennedy. If there's anyone that needs some extra help.
Exactly.
Of all the candidates, it's, he, I feel like, really probably is the most clean as far as like what he wants and how to get it done. As you get into big business like Trump is and lifetime politics, I mean, can probably get a pretty complicated web at some point in time.
Although that's what people loved about Trump, that he wasn't, right? And he was just a businessman. And then it was like, this is what Laura Trump told me, that I one of the biggest takeaways from my hour with her on my show. She's like, he doesn't have to do this.
No, exactly.
He never did.
Yeah.
This is proof in 2015 when he came down the golden escalator, like over at Trump Tower here in New York, like announcing it. He has billions of dollars, how many different homes, how many different golf courses. He could have just ridden off into the sunset. Especially to me, especially now, like, you did it for 4 years. Say what you want about how the elections went in 2020.
Correct.
And okay, I'm good. I'm 78 years old now. Why? So she literally, and I'm like, what is the why? And she said, he literally loves this country. How many people with that much wealth and success and satisfaction would willingly go do this? And by the way, come out of office. She said the only president who's left office with less money.
MAGA. It's so crazy that people are like, so MAGA. It's like, make America great again? Like,
why is that offensive?
How's it so bad?
Right.
I mean, when I went on Tucker and I went to Charlie Kirk's event in AmFest.
Yeah.
Put on by Turning Point. And I had a post with my sister and saying like, oh, I love America, and it's all red, white, and blue. And people just thought I was radical.
I watched all of your Instagram posts and in your story where you're posting all those things. And I'm like, here it comes, here it comes. And then when you reposted, I think it was in your story as well, and, create mode, let me type something up. And
you're like, post it. I was only doing that cathartically. And then I was
glad you did.
I was like, fuck it.
Yeah. I'm glad you did, because you said what I believe most people agree with, which is, listen, I'm really not either way. I love our country and we need to be better, and I'm learning. And unfortunately, that does take courage to do right now, which is silly because we usually associate courage with many other things. Again, as the daughter of a retired Army colonel and military all around me, and we're in New York where it's all about people who are making $50,000 a year to protect us. Like, that's courage to me. But what you're doing now does take that, especially because it is easier and safer and cheaper to remain silent. It is.
Oh, yeah.
In every aspect of our lives. Like, I know why people shut up. I know why people have told me how stupid I am for speaking up. And maybe they're right. At some point you did say it's cathartic is, I think, a really good word before you get to the point where you're like, you know what? You're encouraging all these other people to be who they are. Yeah. At my daughter's high school, you can be a girl one day, a boy the next, and a cat the next day. And we're fine with however.
Damn minds.
Like, stop. So if I say that I'm voting Republican or Democrat or whatever, get out of my face with your judgment, because that is actually the exact opposite of what you're preaching, the hypocrisy and diversity of thought and DEI, but only if you fit into this box. Like, I'm done and I'm calling it out now.
I have this sort of feeling about, because obviously being a girl and racing and, being asked to do female-driven things over time, and I've never been a fan of it, because I've always thought that the more I sort of highlight being different, it's obvious. I don't have to say anything. The more different I am. And I think that really applies across the board for people that are trying to be in an equal position, respected, opportunities, whatever those things are in society. And I saw something that you are not a fan of the Black National Anthem.
Right.
And I want you to explain why that is and your logic and how you feel about that kind of thing.
It's newer that they started to call it that. And it's unnecessary. Right. We're all Americans. There is one anthem. If you don't want to sing it, don't. But to me, that actually creates more divide.
Right. It just points.
What are white people supposed to do during that? Then, like, okay, am I allowed to sing, or am I offending you if I participate in this? Like, just give me the freaking rules. The rules are changing every single day.
So hard to know. Someone like me just stays away. I just don't.
But that's the problem.
Right. Like, I don't want to be wrong because I don't mean anything ill will. So it's easier to just not say anything.
That's the problem. But at some point, it does build up, and that's what we've seen in this country in so many ways. It's a beautiful song. All of a sudden, it's called the Black National, or all of a sudden, it's being played and referred to in that way. And why? We are Americans. You make other people feel the way you say you have felt.
Different.
Like,
or uncomfortable.
Aren't we doing this? By the way, that was always the beauty of sport to me. I knew at a really young age, when I decided when I was 11 years old that I wanted to be a sportscaster, I was watching the 84 Olympics. And I remember like crying during the anthem and then realizing I lived in Colorado. So every Sunday, John Elway and the Denver Broncos, like every person in the state, black, white, gay, straight, whatever, like we wore our jerseys and we high-fived in the grocery store, and we were all on the same team for 3 hours. And I felt that as a kid. I was like, I want to be part of that. Sport brings us together. Now as sports, they're playing these two different, and it's confusing. Like, we're doing this to ourselves. I'm not going to play the game. It's bullshit. And it's created by many of the people who complain about the division. So pick a side. Like,
do you think that sports is a platform to be able to speak for your own personal beliefs, such as like obviously the Colin Kaepernick thing with kneeling, and there's been various things over time in sports where athletes have sort of made a little bit of a personal political stance or just a personal preference of what offends them. I'm curious what your perspective is on using the platform that they have to play the sport that they have a talent in for something else.
I do see both sides. Like, I see the corporations, the NFL, in this case, ESPN, whatever it might be, NASCAR, like, hey, you represent us. Keep it clean. Just play the game, because at the end of the day, don't we want everyone to watch football or the NBA or whatever it may be? And so when you choose a side and then speak out, it does divide more, I guess. Or maybe people are like, okay, I'm not going to watch this anymore because you're shoving it down my throat. And there was a lot of criticism with that in the NBA, especially during the bubble, during the finals in the bubble in Orlando. And it's Black Lives Matter all over the courts and everywhere, and the jerseys and the rainbows and all the things, and which baseball players and hockey players have been like, you're not forcing me to wear the jersey with the rainbow. Like, what, just for this month? Right. Not respect them for the other 11 months? Right. Like, stop.
There's
an
implied hypocrisy in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
absolutely. So I get it from a business perspective, and I actually super support it. When I was at ESPN, back before everything blew up in 2020 with COVID and George Floyd, which is when everything changed, there was a policy. We don't speak up and speak out about anything political, and none of us did for the most part. And a couple who did off the reservation got in trouble. And I liked that because there's so many different opinions, which we all absolutely have a right to. But all I know is that for our ratings, I wanted everybody to watch. And to not push anybody away based on our opinions as hosts, anchors, journalists, etc. And then the floodgates opened and that was it. Quite often, though, with some of the things Colin Kaepernick said, or even some of the things LeBron has said, like, just be accurate, I guess, with what you're saying, with your tweets and at a microphone, whatever it may be. And there are a lot of things that weren't factually correct that LeBron mentioned about Breonna Taylor, for instance, right? So I just, like, I'm always afraid to speak up unless I have triple checked my facts. And that's the journalist in me. But it's also knowing that if you do have a platform, there is a responsibility to get the facts straight before you give your opinion. And to realize everyone's opinions are based on what? Based on their experiences. So that's why I respect your opinion, even if it's different, because I don't know how you've lived. I don't know what changed you or affected you. Right.
This might be you doing a good job according to your upbringing and your experience and your environment.
My 98-year-old grandmother, when Barack Obama, like, I disagree with her why behind it, because you're voting for somebody based on race. But I had never been segregated. I'd never been told I couldn't shop here or eat at this restaurant or drink out of that water fountain like my Black grandmother. So I disagreed, but respected it. The key is, are we sharing our opinions like with kindness? Are we sharing it the right way, or are we doing it in an attacking way? I think you can share your opinion and not be ugly and negative and cutting. I say to my teenagers all the time, it's not what you're saying, it's the way you're saying it. So watch your tone or you're grounded, right?
How do we solve these problems? And I'm quite spiritual and do like to do the inner work. And when we change the way we see ourselves and the way we orient in the world changes. And so I'm curious how you have such perspective and such wisdom. I heard some of your story with your parents and how, with one being Black, one being white, and then that not being acceptable to your parents, like that, to their parents, that was, they were disowned in that process. And hearing how beautiful it was that your dad would write letters to sort of report monthly of like how everything was going, because they didn't have any more contact anymore after your mom and dad got married and then got pregnant. And I'm like, wow, you have like that was such a challenging start. But also obviously there's been such, like, with all challenge comes growth. So how did that all, like, tell me these lessons? And then also I'm curious about the ones that you've achieved on your own too, because those are harder earned, the ones that you have to recognize a pattern that you have to grow from. So I would love to hear about your parents. And
they're everything, Danica.
Like, they just sound like they have like one of those iconic, beautiful love stories.
They do. And I'm in awe of them. And I'm only standing now after my, controversy at ESPN for years. And then my own divorce, frankly, with, at the time, 3 teenagers, and because of them and their strength, because of their example, and because of their, they're just strong. That's the word that I keep coming back to. And when they got married in 1971, you have to think about that era and coming off the civil rights era and how America was divided racially then. I talked about this with my mom last week, and just, I don't know how it came up again, but the number of friends they lost who were like, oh, yeah. And then couldn't come to the wedding conveniently, and they never heard from again because of the color of their skin, because one was marrying the opposite race. And it went both ways, but it's my mom's side. She's white, Irish, Italian, that disowned her for marrying my dad. It's just perspective. I think Bakari Sellers said it recently, or saying how America is no better racially than they were in the 60s and 70s. I'm like, shut up.
You're like, I have a story to tell you.
Yeah, because I've, number one, done my homework, and that's just not true. But number two, the people that are most important in my life, besides my kids, they lived it and they pushed through it, through adversity. And so I just think we all should maintain perspective. It doesn't diminish what we've been through, right? Because everybody's got something. And I think that's super important to remember. But there's no sense in comparing. And okay, what do you take from that terrible challenge? I can't imagine. My mom got married at 21 or 22, having me at like 23. I can't imagine doing that without my mom by my side and my brothers and my family. And can you imagine having to make that choice?
Just the amount of faith that she had that it would work too. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just look, relationships are
country.
always hard,
They lived in a
right?
different country.
Right. Traveling around, living different places. Wow. What a faith move that
Yes.
they had such a real love that it was worth it, you know?
So that's the example that I have, which is what set the bar pretty high too,
Yeah.
which is why I'm 51 and single. Lord help me. But like, it's okay because I know what good is. And not just for me, but for the example that I'm trying to set for my kids.
Yeah.
And that's all because of the example my parents set for me and pushed through all those times. But that's also why I've been really sensitive. And when, I saw recently Amber Rose was criticized by Joy Reid, who I have zero respect for, frankly. And I don't usually talk like that, but zero respect because I don't respect people who choose to divide and make things about race all the time. But Joy Reid was one of many who was criticizing her. And, she says she's not Black because she's biracial. And, I'm super sensitive about that because I have many times been just hated on for absolutely saying that, yes, I'm biracial. And I'm so proud of all of me. I'm proud of my Black dad who battled through a lot himself and his father who was a Buffalo soldier who in the 10th Cavalry, like doing things that Black soldiers weren't allowed to fight with white American soldiers.
Your DNA.
Like, again, I'm nothing. I've
Your
been
DNA to buck the system.
but I'm nothing compared to them. But don't tell me that I can't celebrate all of me. Like I always say it's so stupid, but like pretty sure my white mom was there the day I was born, and like she matters equally, and their marriage is perfect and imperfect, but perfect in that way to show me there are no excuses. Like if you believe in something, which in this case is each other.
Yeah.
And my mom said it on that NFL Films piece that you're referring to. And it's posted on my Twitter, pinned on my Twitter forever.
It's a beautiful story. Everybody should go see it.
Every time I watch it, and I probably watched it 100 times, I cry every time. Because that's true love in a society where we don't see it. And what if they hadn't done that? You wouldn't be listening to my big mouth right now. That's for sure. But it's just perspective on everything. And it was harder to choose love in that moment when she had to say goodbye to her family. They eventually came back, but it was never the same. So I think the wisdom, I thank you, I guess. I don't know that it's that. It's just perspective for me because I have certainly gone through some things, and some would say self-inflicted. Sure. Because I chose to not be silent anymore.
Sure.
Call it what you want. I don't care. And I think that's the best part that I've helped my parents get there too, because they've been so upset and protective, of course. And my mother would call and say, please delete, go on Instagram and just delete all the comments, like thousands of people wishing I would die or my kids.
Oh, I get it.
Girl, you've seen it all. So how do your parents handle it? Because my mom said, delete, delete, delete. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not deleting this because that makes it look like it didn't happen.
It also makes it look like you cared. And that is even more important, I think, because what matters is that you don't give a shit.
Exactly.
And so I guess from my family's perspective, I think it came from probably my dad, especially just being like, who cares? Everybody's going to hate. It's not a matter of erasing it. They're the ones that look like idiots. Because when someone sprays negativity, it says so much more about them than it does about you. It has everything to do with their insecurities, their triggers. It's not you. It's what they feel they lack in them. Do they lack the bravery that you do? Probably. Do they lack the integrity? Do they lack the even knowledge? Do they... do they even have the opportunities that you do? No, and they feel insecure. There's a million.
You're so right. People. I remember one day, one of my first couple months of SportsCenter, and I was a disaster. Like Danica, I was so bad.
Like not good on
yeah,
or just like well, it's new.
It's new, like
and
scary.
It's a joke. It's like something about rodeos. It's like, this ain't my first rodeo, and then there's like a sign meme thing that's like, something about my second rodeo. That's not a lot of rodeos, like it's pretty low amount of rodeos. Like even your 2 rodeos is not very much. You get log 100 rodeos.
Okay, I hadn't seen that, and that's so true because it takes many, many rodeos and getting bucked off that horse, right?
Yeah.
I remember a woman I was on air with who'd been there for a while and I so looked up to and had done a couple of things on air that were just ugly and towards me. Like it was live and I was just, I was so
just like a cutting, jarring comment. Demeaning?
Yes. And intentionally, like the producer was like, okay, Sage, you're doing this one and then you're doing this one. Uh-huh. So we're coming out of break and she just took it all, took mine, took hers and said, have a good day. And I'm like, oh, like just petty shit. That's like so unnecessary. And but then saying something about like my clothes once on air. And I was like, I just could never imagine doing that. Someone I looked up to as well, right? Never meet your heroes. And so I remember driving home and calling my mom and just not being emotional, but just like, why? Like, and as women, there's so few of us there. Like, what are we doing? We bitch and moan about not enough of us. And then when there are, we take each other out. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
So she said exactly what you said. She said, sweetheart, this is not about you. This is about someone else feeling threatened, insecure, maybe having a really bad day and you were in their way. Now, like I say to my kids, especially with girl drama, with teenagers and, you know, now all three are in college this year, but I'm like,
enjoyed plenty of, I'm sure.
Oh, it's shocking because I was such a tomboy. It just didn't exist back then, I feel like, as much. And now, I mean, the 80s were different. And now I'm like, good Lord, girls. But I always say, you know, everybody's got something, right? And you don't know what's happening at home or whatever. Never an excuse, though. Like, that is not an excuse for bad behavior, but it might be a reason. So, like, don't take that in and absorb that. And I would absorb it and be so sad that this woman or whoever it was, this producer, said that or did that.
You felt bad for her, or you felt bad for yourself?
I felt insecure. I felt sad. I felt hurt. Like, I allowed that for the majority of my life until about 4 years ago to take it on.
Was the transition that you started to just feel more confident in yourself and and what you did and what you were capable of and your own voice? Was it your own confidence, you think, that shifted? Or
it was more the realization that no matter how nice I was, how supportive I was of other women at ESPN, how much I fought for them when they didn't know, how great of a teammate I was, how hard I worked, all of the things, personally and professionally, that no matter if you did everything that you thought was the right thing, it still wasn't good enough. So at some point, who's the idiot? Like, I have to like read the room at some point and realize that like you're trying so hard and they're not going to bend or be kinder because of whatever's going on inside of them.
Yeah.
So I finally realized like I'm killing myself. I'm exhausted because I was such a pleaser. And then you realize,
I was going to say, these are some codependent sort of.
Oh,
because I am. So like I recognize it. The way I feel is determined by the way you feel about me. It's like the quintessential framework.
But you are done with that.
Yeah, but mine's categorized in a bracket of just relationships. The rest of it, friendships, work, all that stuff, I just don't care.
So that's what we need to talk maybe.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, because it's so hard. And when you do the work, though, and you've talked about that publicly, then you do realize the codependency and the why behind those feelings of being a pleaser and wanting to fix and to help. And then you're like, okay, they gotta want it too. So
sure. You could also probably be more of a high empath where you feel the way they're feeling. And so you don't want them to feel bad. So you try and make it work better for them, but it's also so you feel better. Because when they feel better, you feel better. But so that's then empathy levels.
Totally. But then you also absorb their negativity or their hurt or pain. And then even if they're in a good place, your energy is sapped because you're so worried about, good Lord,
energy vampires. I have to ask about, because we've mentioned it a couple of times now, and also when you walked in, but the eat, pray, love thing. And so I think it's just like a great sort of like transition into this sort of dream you have, because I just was in Europe for a month and I spent 6 weeks there last year, and I'm whittling down because I just can't quite drink that much.
But the wine there is like so good.
Oh, the food is also like so clean. Like you go to Italy, you really can't eat the pasta and the bread.
Really?
It really does nothing.
Like the gluten?
Now, like it can bother me in France or Spain a little bit, but like in Italy, there's something about it. You know, you have had this sort of, you've had major things in your career happen, good and bad and challenging. controversial, I guess maybe is a better word. You've also had, these amazing parents, but that they had their challenges. 3 kids, an amazing job. And then you were with your high school sweetheart for, you said 26 years, which you were
college sweetheart, 27, married for 20, together for 27.
Which is amazing, but not together anymore. So what is this endeavor you want to take on and why?
Are you going to give me your recommendation list to go north, south, top to bottom, and middle? For my 50th birthday, my best friend made me watch Eat, Pray, Love, and I'd never watched it with Julia Roberts. And I remember just like sobbing throughout it. Probably because I'm like, how am I 50? I'm way too immature to be this old. Like, what's happening?
Way too beautiful. Like, you're so young.
No, thank you. Honestly, it's the hair. Like, the curly hair makes me look younger than I am. So I need everything. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
accept the compliment. Accept the compliment.
It's your smile. It's your eyes. When you go, you're like, I was doing a mascara in the car. Like, you don't need makeup, darling.
Oh, girlfriend, I do. But I love you. Thank you. I watched it with my parents too, which is so funny, with my best friend Tiffany and my parents. I just saw this woman, and it's more now in hindsight what I took from that movie, because I felt this emotion with her when I watched the movie, but then now doing some work on myself going, I love that she just said, screw it, I'm going to go and I'm going to let go of everything, and I'm going to go like take chances and try new things. And okay, I don't know which way this road leads literally, and I'm going to walk up this cobblestone path just to try it and go into this little wine bar. And who knows who I'll sit by, what flowers I might pick, and what, like, all the things when you've lived such a structured life as a military kid, and rules and regulations. And
that level of winging it is weird,
right? In a corporate media career,
right?
In parenting, and being the pleaser, like, yes, no, like, that's, oh my God. I thought that exists. Is this just a movie? Like, can someone do that? Yeah, I'd been more recently divorced at that point. And so I just admired, Julia Roberts' ability to have the courage to go alone and to try it and do it and to cry and to laugh, to just let herself go. Because I've always
eat all the pasta,
eat it all.
These doesn't make you fat. That's the only fake thing is the pasta does not make you fat.
Yeah, she looked hot.
Okay, fine.
Well, these are expandable. Like, there's a drawstring, so I can open them up. If I eat a lot, it's fine. I just super important to do it alone. And go deeper. Even if at that point,
what do you hope to find?
Now I'm going to need a drink.
There's some whiskey over here.
No, that would be bad. Do not let me do that.
I don't drink any whiskey in Europe, so I could probably take a sip with you.
That would be really bad. Because I've never been alone.
That's scary.
Until the last 2 years after my divorce, because I met him at 20. He's my first boyfriend. That's it. Like, made out a couple times, but that's it.
So you only slept with one person.
Okay, that is not the case anymore.
Okay.
It's been a couple years.
I'm not like call her daddy over here, but I just had to ask.
No, that's
talking about only holding hands.
That has evolved. However, like, I'm now, I love you. I'm in the space of, I actually don't want to sleep with anyone else until I'm in love, like a trusting relationship, like full on. I'm not saying engaged or married.
Sure.
When I grew up young and Catholic, that's what I thought. Absolutely. And
you're a relationship person. That's why you were in one for so long. That's fine. That's the way I am too.
Loyal.
I'm not a casual sex kind of person in the slightest.
Hell no. Like, I jokingly said this to my mom right after I got divorced, and she's going to be so mad at me. She's like, listen, sweetheart, she's upset. I've been married and with the same, and no regrets. And I'm very grateful for those years and father of my children. Great. She's like, I want you to go and to travel and to just do you and do all these things. And I was like, okay. And I go, can I go be a whore? She's like, absolutely. I was like, okay. And then I'm like, I can't do this. That's not me. And so I have not and will not.
Yeah.
But it's also a thing growing up Catholic and what the expectations are. And okay, if I do this, am I going to hell anymore like I used to, which was not from the Catholic Church. That was more from whatever. But like, to not have judgment. Like, I judge myself.
I was going to say, you got to crack that shell a little bit. It's worth dabbling just to go, oh, okay, I'm not a bad person for doing it.
I've cracked it a little. But what I do know now, because of what we talked about before with being kind of an empath and feeling so much, I know that like I'm all or nothing.
So me. That's so me too. I get it.
I was on Raya for like a minute because someone said, you should. I was like, okay.
It's like the cool one that not everyone can get off.
All right.
You know?
Yeah, so cool. And I'm like, bye. First of all, the first time I like hearted somebody, like somebody, I was like, huh. And then I was like, put it down. And did he heart me back? Oh, then it's rejection.
Oh, and that doesn't need to be had, right? Nobody needs that. Like enough business, like enough in front of you rejection in relationships. You don't need any more than that.
No. Can I tell you my moment though? And then I'll shut up.
Yeah.
New Year's Day this year. First of all, right during pandemic, June of 2020, I had just gotten divorced. We're shut down in Connecticut. So like, this is like May and we're still shut down.
Fresh.
And the kids, like, it's terrible. And so every other weekend they go to their dad's house, which is like 5 minutes away. But then here I am in this big house in Connecticut in the cold by myself when everything I'd done in my adult life and career was based on providing this home and this environment for my babies. Mm-hmm. And then I'm alone. And I was like, I cannot stay here on the off weekends when they're with him. So sight unseen, I bought a condo in Fort Lauderdale. My realtor snuck her way in, this hot little Cuban thing who they wouldn't let her in because of all the COVID stupid HOA rules. Even in Florida, they act like Florida was nuts and it really wasn't. And so she snuck in and she FaceTimed me. And all I saw behind her in the living room was the ocean. That place has saved me because it began to teach me to be alone. And so this New Year's Day, I actually been dating somebody for a couple of months. And I knew on New Year's Day, done. And so every time I'm in Florida, no matter the weather, I get in that ocean. I feel like the salt and all the things, And so I was in there and emotional. And I'm like, okay, New Year's resolution, whatever it is. And I just prayed. And I always pray when I'm in the ocean. I don't know. And so I was like, Lord, please don't bring me anyone. Don't bring me any man unless you're bringing me the man. I don't want to waste time because my time is precious with myself and with my kids. And I don't want games. And I have a list of things I'd like, but I feel super confident for the first time ever that I will know when that right person is there. Does that mean I can't date? No, of course, but I'm just not going to continue it if there's not something there who has the same values,
right?
And is kind. And just wants to do similar things in life because, right? I mean, it's cheesy. There's no guarantees for tomorrow. Like, why waste our time with people that aren't?
Being alone is the only way I really learned who I was. Because when you're alone, you only run your own schedule. You think your own thoughts. You plan your own eating schedule, activities, hobbies. It's like the only way to really know who you are. You also start to orient with your own energy. So you really know who you are energetically as well. Are you friendly? Are you outgoing? Are you pleasant? Are you snippy? Are you like, you really start to kind of like go, oh, and this. And when you don't have anyone pulling you down or pulling you anyway, you really naturally kind of like spiral upwards. And so the hard thing to do is to hold on to that. And so the best thing to do is to be that alone, learn it. And then when you go into these situations, because it gets real tricky because you're like, ooh, should I make this better? Is it actually my fault? And should I try and make this work? Or is this really just like, am I trying to force a, circle through a square hole? Like, what is, you have to know yourself. So I think your reason for going is a really, really great reason because you'll just know yourself. You'll just know where you are. You'll know where North Star Center is for you. And that is how you'll know when you're in the right relationship because you can stay there. Right?
I know I'm going to feel it. In these last 4 years since buying that little condo, have forced it and have taught me that, but with such peace and to do it by myself. Like I made that decision by myself. It was so weird with my money. Right. And he was a stay-at-home dad. So it was all my money. Yeah. Like it's all like, that's a whole other thing that I'm dealing with, just forgiveness for, enabling and a lot of different things, despite a lot of good as well in that. But just be more kind to myself for doing what I thought was the right thing all those years. And now I'm an empty nester. I have all 3 kids in college as of right now. Yeah. And so if not now, when? This is the time to be.
Well, I'll get you the list.
To make those decisions. You will?
I'll eat all the pasta. My favorite thing is affogato.
Oh, amazing.
Cafe affogato, which is ice cream with espresso.
I make that at home, Danica. Okay. You don't have to go to Italy for this.
So I'm sheltered. But I finally got an affogato. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about you and CAA and going after CAA for their fiduciary responsibility to protect you during the case with ESPN. And, your piece is important, but this is going to steal from it in some way. So how are you going to hold it together, and what's your hope in that arrangement or that this situation? What do you hope to get out of it?
Well, first of all, I had an incredible relationship with my agent, original agent at CAA, Nick Khan, who is now the head of the WWE. So when he left, that's when things changed. The big picture is there's so many conflicts of interest with in the broadcasting industry, especially at the top, with talent and the agents who are working deals for their talent, but with the exact same executives for all the talent. And so if they're representing, let's say, 10 at ESPN, one agent has, let's say, 10 clients at ESPN, which happens for sure. Well, I don't know any female agents at CAA that are doing ESPN deals. He knows when she's coming up and he's coming up and she's coming up. And so the key is I am paying you 10% of my salary every single month to represent me, to be the liaison and the representative for me in between, to the bosses and the leadership. When I was going through my ESPN drama, they didn't support me the way that they should have and needed to. Again, the conflicts of interest are the reason. And when you represent too many people, it's in their best interest to say, you know what, let's silence this person over here in order to prepare for this really big deal from a much higher priced talent, to make sure that we stay in the good graces of executives to get that deal, because that commission is going to be higher than her commission. I've learned so many tough lessons in that way. And my goal is accountability. So the next young, old broadcaster who has put their trust in this company and these people, any company, any agency, because it happens with all the top ones. And these networks, they only answer the phone to certain agents. So if we have this agreement and that's what I'm paying you, you have to do your job for me all the time, not just when it's convenient for you based on commissions, but those conflicts of interest are real. And I want other young, old journalists to know with whom they're dealing, know more about this business. This is, to me, just like it was at ESPN and Disney. All I wanted for them to do was apologize for the double standard. Literally, we asked them, just apologize for punishing me and taking assignments away and all of the things, while you will on an off day, my comments were made off day, side everything, like nothing to do with ESPN, while others are allowed to go on the air, on our airwaves, and talk politics and talk about Roe versus Wade during an NFL or NBA show on air. And you allow that, but not this. All I'm saying is be consistent. And so I wanted an apology from them. They said no. I sued because they wouldn't apologize. This literally, like, I would have still been there and there would have been no embarrassing lawsuit and no settlement. Instead, I followed through. And with this, listen, I didn't even use an attorney for my divorce. I probably should have. I am the least litigious person. But there's principle, and there's right and wrong, and there's accountability.
This is why you sleep at night.
It is. And I don't even know what tomorrow brings. But I'm okay with that because, I don't know if you heard in that NFL Thumbs piece, this is what my dad made us memorize as kids. And it's so annoying. I say it to myself every day because it works. It's true. Part of the cadet prayer at West Point helped me to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and to never be content with a half truth when the whole truth can be won. Like, it's so freaking simple. We know right from wrong. It's just easier to choose the wrong, quiet way. Quiet, less expensive, all of the things, whether it's at work in a relationship. And most people do what? I've done it a million times in my life. You take the easy route because it's easier and we're human, but no more. That's what it was with ESPN and Disney, despite that being my dream job. And it broke my heart to have to make the decision. Not as heartbreaking with CAA. The relationships were different. The commitment was different, obviously. But they influence a lot of careers in our industry. And shame on those who aren't honest about it and loyal. And I would just want others to know